Listen, you heard it. Send the cops, the Fed, the DA to come get me. Not guilty. We're getting into Sean, Diddy, P. Diddy, Love, Bad Boy Executive, Stay in the Light, people, Combs. Verdicts, I guess, have come down on 5 charges in his trafficking trial, and he was acquitted of the most serious ones. So we're going to get into the details of the case. We're going to talk about what this could potentially mean in the future. There's been a lot of social media reaction from celebrities, after weeks of jaw-dropping testimony, some digital evidence, some calls, things of that nature, text messages, voice notes, whispers that there were federal wiretaps, all types of things, The jury in the Sean Combs trial has finally spoken. Today, July 2nd, 2025, he was found guilty of transporting Cassie and Jane Doe across state lines for illegal activity, the Mann Act. However, and this is a big however, he was cleared of all RICO and federal sex trafficking charges, right? I have said from the beginning, he was overcharged. And this verdict goes to show that. Now, we know yesterday the jurors had reached a decision on 4 of the 5 counts. The one that they were hung up around, which many people thought sort of signaled a death knell, so to speak, for Diddy, was the RICO charge. They also asked a question on Monday at the end of deliberations as to whether the correct definition of distribution as it relates to drug use. And so, Diddy was handing out party favors before, during, and after the freak-offs. But he wasn't selling it, which is what a lot of people think of when they think about distribution. However, under the letter of the law, just handing the substance off to a friend, even in a personal situation, could be considered distribution. However, the jury disagreed, right? I'm sure that we'll be hearing from the very jurors at some point. There's a lot of money to be made from speaking up on what went down. But Diddy's free. Well, he's not free, but he's cleared of the most serious charges, right? This federal investigation was launched in 2023. Prosecutors alleged that he ran a criminal enterprise that used his music empire to cover up coercion, abuse, and trafficking. The jury disagreed. If you are setting up a hotel room for your boss and his girlfriend, and they might not, by the way, never in life should most of you call yourself a freak. You just shouldn't, because you're not. Compared to what Diddy was talking about, you're probably not a freak. You probably just have a healthy sexual appetite. I don't know. Andy, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to push back. I think there are some freaks out there that are just like Diddy.
No, there absolutely are. But I'm just saying the average person talking about I'm a freak, probably not. Probably not at all, I would say. Right? But outside of the courtroom, there was, celebration. Christian Combs, Lil Diddy, he and Justin both brought their girlfriends to court today. All the children were in court, right? Love's mother, Dana, is it Dana? I'm not sure how you pronounce her first name, but she was also in court. Diddy's mom. There was a guy named Charlucci. He was giving away shirts that said, "A Freako is not a Rico." Charlucci used to be, I think, road manager back in the day for Jodeci. I believe that's what he used to do. I remember seeing him. And, it was a scene, including a moment where people, including YouTuber Armand Wiggins, were dousing themselves in baby oil, yelling out, "More oil! More oil!" Now, if you've been paying attention to the case, this is what Diddy would direct Cassie and the gentleman entertainer to do at times during the freak offs. So it's a lot there, right? Diddy's lawyers immediately asked for bail. They said his family is here right now. It is important to note that the crimes that he is being charged with, prosecutors are planning to ask for the maximum charges for each of those crimes, which is 10 years for each, which would be a 20-year sentence. But the average sentencing for basically prostitution across lines is about 21 months. So we'll see. We have to remember that Diddy has been in jail since September of last year, and he will be there until October 3rd when sentencing is announced. We don't know what that could come down to, but Judge Joe Brown weighed in. He said that from the beginning, Diddy was overcharged and that RICO was not proven, and that based on the information, Diddy probably should have been released on bail. What his team proposed was $1 million bond. He would be at his Star Island house with the ability to travel to New York and Los Angeles only. The promise of no freak-offs, no communications, etc., etc. Prosecution argued that Diddy had violent tendencies. The only thing is that he was not convicted of a violent crime. So do with that what you will. It's a sliding goalpost to a degree, right? But he did, during trial, or at least his team did, admit that he was violent. Obviously, we saw the video like everyone else. But it seems like, especially as quickly as the jurors came to a conclusion, because remember, just at last night, they said that they were deadlocked on the RICO charge, right? With there being two holdouts, one for, one against. And they reached a conclusion after getting the case on Monday effectively. Closing arguments ended Friday. This is Wednesday morning when they dropped the verdict. They were ready to go home. And I also believe that, from what I understand, and I'm not sure if Jasmine's calling in, we'll see, but the jurors were a bit older. We know there was one as old as 75 years old, a white man. And we know that there were some women of color on the jury, 2 black women specifically, primarily men. I think that the fact that they were older, even though the details were quite salacious, I think that they looked at these women and were kind of old school with the thought process. Like, hard head makes a soft behind. You knew what you were doing. These are just toxic relationships, and, a man with a little bit of money, flexing, but they were doing their things too. And, the prostitution is what it is. They hired these men to come in and do what they did. But that's about it. DH, do you have any thoughts on all of this? Are you surprised by the verdict? Are you surprised about the chaos that was taking place outside of the courtroom following the announcement?
Well, the easiest thing for me is the most entertaining, which is outside the courtroom. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I like that kind of stuff, that buffoonery, that act stuff. I mean, I guess, yeah, I loved it. I wasn't surprised. And you're right. I immediately thought of the Boondocks episode in the R. Kelly thing. So we had seen it before. So that was entertaining. And I think people were trying to be entertaining, trying to be funny. Everything's a IG moment and all that kind of stuff. But, I mean, when he didn't get the RICO thing, I was like, okay, that's where I saw his homes being invaded and all of that kind of stuff. And when that didn't happen, that was just a big failure and a smack in the face of the federal government and all types of government. So he beat it big time. And like I said, what he was charged for was transporting women across state lines for prostitutional acts. and they said that's 20 months or something like that. Okay, that's a smack in the arm, but as much time, effort, energy, and I believe, I gotta believe in the court system. I gotta believe that all the evidence and the jurors did a good job. He's not guilty on 3 counts. He has to deal with the trafficking, and we push it from there. I mean, that's how I feel about it. I'm trying to wonder, why does it take 3 months to sentence him?
Right. Which,
because we're July 3rd, October 3rd. It's like, dang, I got to stick around for that long. And you're right, none of this stuff. He's transferring. He's a Uber driver for these ladies. He's not, wasn't the whole, violent thing and all of that. So I'm just surprised he wasn't able to step out of the courthouse today.
I think they didn't want to let him go.
Yeah.
I think that they are probably highly disappointed. You think about when they raided his homes. One of the things, and we've talked about this on this show, is that they showed guns with scratched off serial numbers. He wasn't charged with those firearms. Those things weren't included, but they were shown to cast a certain light. I think the one person, Rico, worked against them.
Yeah.
We didn't hear from KK, whose name was mentioned a lot, or D-Rock, or any of the other security. So that leaves some things open to interpretation.
Yeah. And there's a lot of these cases that get a lot of fanfare and a lot of dirty laundry out there, that when it comes to the court of law, nothing's happening. As you know, my good friend Munroe Code, when the Fed said they're going to take down college basketball and all that kind of stuff, and he eventually got a felon for wiring money across state lines. But at the end of the day, it was a lot of stuff. We have NIL now, and he got 6 months, But his name was just drugged, and he caught a felony. But now it's totally legal to do everything he was doing. So it's just something about the whole fanfare, and because this doesn't seem like a lot. It just does not seem like a lot for what we saw, like Homeland Security,
right,
raiding him. And then when we heard before, if they do that, they gotta have something. It's 99% prosecution. Well, he's the 1%.
I think that social media directed a lot of Homeland Security and the government's actions initially. I think that they heard a lot of the rumors that were being circulated online. They saw Cassie's lawsuit and Little Rod's, and I feel like they were a little anxious. Some things that look as if the prosecution has some sour grapes, understandably so, if they feel, well, I'm sure they do, feel as though they laid out a proper case. Cassie, and through her lawyer, and Deontay Adams, the stylist that was her friend, both sent letters in to the judge asking that he not release Diddy on bail, that they were fearful of retaliation. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
Is he really going to get out there and wild out right now when he just got his life back?
Yeah, I mean, I think that.
If y'all think that, it's going to be later.
But hey, those are fearful women, so we want to respect their fear.
Deontay's a man.
I'm sorry, they're scared. Particularly Cassie, with the video and all that kind of stuff. So I could see her being afraid.